Class 12, Chapter 3rd, Human Reproduction. As you are aware, humans are sexually reproducing and viviparous. The reproductive events in humans include formation of gametes, gametogenesis, sperms in male and ovum in females, transfer of sperm into the female genital tract, insemination, and fusion of male and female gametes, fertilization, leading to formation of zygote. This is followed by formation and development of blastocyst and its attachment to the uterine wall, implantation, embryonic development, gestation, and delivery of the baby, parturition. You have learned that these reproductive events occur after puberty. There are remarkable differences between the reproductive events in the male and in the female. For example, sperm formation continues even in old men, but formation of ovum cases in women around the age of 50 years. Let us examine the male and female reproductive system in human. 3.1 The male reproductive system. The male reproductive system is located in the pelvis region, figure 3.1a. It includes a pair of testes along with the accessory ducts, glands, and the external genitalia. The testes are situated outside the abdominal cavity within a pouch called scrotum. The scrotum helps in maintaining the low temperature of the testes 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius lower than the normal internal body temperature. Necessary for spermatogenesis in adults, each testis is oval in shape with a length of about 4 to 5 cm and a width of about 2 to 3 cm. The testis is covered by a dense covering. Each testis has about 250 compartments called testicular lobules, figure 3.1b. Each lobule contains 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubules in which sperms are produced. Each seminiferous tubule is lined on its inside by two types of cell called male germ cells, spermatogonia and Sertoli cells. Figure 3.2 The male germ cells undergo meiotic division, finally leading to sperm formation. While Sertoli cells provide nourishment to the germ cells, the region outside the seminiferous tubule called interstitial spaces contain small blood vessels and interstitial cells or Leydig cells. Figure 3.2 Leydig cell synthesizes and secrete testicular hormone called androgen. Other immunologically components called are present. The male sex accessory ducts include retitestis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, vas deferens. Figure 3.1b The seminiferous tubule of the testis open into the vas efferentia through retitestis. The vas efferentia of each testis, the epididymis, leads to the vas deferens that ascends to the vesicle and opens into the urethra as the ejaculatory duct. Figure 3.1a These ducts store and transport the sperm from the testis to the outside through urethra. Urethra originates from the urinary bladder and extends through the penis to its external opening called urethral meatus. Figure 3.18 Diagrammatic section view of male pelvis showing reproductive system. Figure 3.b Diagrammatic view of male reproductive system. Part of testis is open to show inner details. Figure 3.2 Diagrammatic section view of seminiferous tubule. The penis is the male external genitalia. Figure 3.1ab. It is made up of special tissue that help in erection of the penis to facilitate insemination. The enlarged end of penis called the glans penis is covered by a loose fold of skin called foreskin. The male accessory gland, figure 3.1ab, include paired seminal vesicle, a prostate, and paired bulbourethral gland. Secretion of these glands consists the seminal plasma, which is rich in fructose, calcium, and certain enzymes. The secretion of bulbourethral gland also help in the lubrication of the penis. 3.2 The female reproductive system. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries along with a pair of oviduct, uterus, cervix, vagina, and the external genitalia located in the pelvic region. Figure 3.3a. These parts of the system, along with a pair of the mammary gland, are integrated structurally, functionally to support the process of ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, birth, and childcare. Ovaries are the primary female sex organ that produce the female gametes, ovum, and several steroids hormones, ovarian hormones. The ovarians are located one on each side of the lower abdomen. Figure 3.3b. Each ovary is about 2 to 4 centimeter in length, is connected to the pelvic region and uterus by ligaments. Each ovary is covered by a thin epithelium which includes the ovarian stroma. The stroma is divided into two zones, a peripheral cortex and an inner medulla. Figure 3.3a diagrammatic section view of female pelvis showing reproductive system. The oviducts, fallopian tubes, uterus and vagina constitute the female accessory duct. Each fallopian tube is about 10 to 12 cm long and extend from the periphery of each ovary to the uterus. Figure 3.3b. The part closer to the ovary is the funnel-shaped infundibulum. The edges of the infundibulum possesses finger-like projections called fimbriae, which help in the collection of the ovum after ovulation. The infundibulum leads to a wider part of the oviduct called ampulla. The last part of the oviduct, isthmus, has a narrow lumen and it joins the uterus. The uterus is single and it is called womb. The shape of the uterus is like an inverted pear. It is supported by ligament attached to the pelvic wall. The uterus opens into vagina through a narrow cervix. The cavity of the cervix is called cervical canal. Figure 3.3b, which along with vagina forms the birth canal. The wall of the uterus has three layers of tissue: the external thin membranous perimetrium, middle thick layer of smooth muscle myometrium, and inner glandular layer is called endometrium that lines the uterine cavity. The endometrium undergoes cyclical changes during menstrual cycle, while the myometrium exhibits strong contraction during delivery of the baby. The female external genitalia include mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. Figure 3.3a. Mons pubis is a cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair. The labia majora are fleshy folds of tissue which extend down from the mons pubis and surrounded the vaginal opening. The labia minora are paired folds of tissue under the labia minora. The opening of the vagina is often covered partially by a membrane called hymen, and clitoris is a tiny finger-like structure which lies at the upper junction of the two labia minora above the urethral opening. The hymen is often torn during the first coitus intercourse. However, it can be broken by a sudden fall or jolt. Insertion of a vaginal tampon, active participation in some sports like horseback riding, cycling, etc. In some women, the hymen persists even after coitus. In fact, the presence or absence of hymen is not reliable indicator of virginity or sexual experience. Figure 3.4, a diagrammatic section view of mammary gland. A function mammary gland is characteristic of all female mammals. The mammary glands are paired structure breasts that contain glandular tissues and variable amount of fat. The glandular tissue of each breast is divided into 15 to 20 mammary lobes containing cluster of cells called alveoli. Figure 3.4. The cells of alveoli secrete milk which is stored in the cavities lumens of alveoli. The alveoli open into mammary tubules. The tubule of each lobe join to form a mammary duct. Several mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla which is connected to lactiferous duct through which milk is sucked out. 3.3 Gametogenesis. The Primary sex organ, the testes in the male and the ovary in the female produce gametes, sperm and ovum respectively. By the process called gametogenesis in testes, the immature male germ cells spermatogonia produce sperms. By spermatogenesis that begin at puberty, the spermatogonia present on the inside wall of seminiferous tubule multiply by mitotic division and increase in numbers. Each spermatogonium is diploid and contain 46 chromosomes. Some of the spermatogonia, called primary spermatocytes, periodically undergo meiosis. A primary spermatocyte complete the first meiotic division, reduction division, leading to formation of two equal haploid cells called secondary spermatocytes, which have only 23 chromosome each. The secondary spermatocyte undergo the second meiotic division to produce four equal haploid spermatids. Figure 3.5. What would be the number of chromosomes in the spermatid? The spermatid are transformed into spermatozoa by the process called spermiogenesis. After spermiogenesis, sperm had become embedded in the Sertoli cell and are finally released from the seminiferous tubule by the process called spermiation. Figure 3.5. Diagrammatic section view of seminiferous tubule enlarged. Spermiogenesis starts at the age of puberty due to insignificant increase in the secretion of gonadotropin releasing hormone GnRH. This, if you recall, is a hypothalamic hormone. The increased level of GnRH then act at the anterior pituitary gland and stimulate secretion of two gonadotropins, luteinizing hormone LH and follicular stimulating hormone FSH. LH act at the leading cell and stimulate synthesis and secretion of androgen. Androgen in turn stimulate the process of spermatogenesis. FSH act as the Sertoli cell and stimulate secretion of some factors which help in the process of spermiogenesis. Let us examine the structure of a sperm. It is a microscopic structure composed of a head, neck, and middle piece and a tail. Figure 3.6a. A plasma membrane envelop the whole body of the sperm. The sperm head contains an elongated haploid nucleus, the anterior portion of which is covered by a cap-like structure, acrosome. The acrosome is filled with enzymes that help fertilization of the ovum. The middle piece processes numerous mitochondria, which produce energy for the movement of tail that facilitate sperm motility essential for fertilization. The human male ejaculates about 200 to 300 million sperms during a coitus, of which for normal fertility at least 60% sperm must have normal shape and size. At least 40% of them must show vigorous motility. Sperms released from the seminiferous tubule are transported by the accessory duct. Secretion of epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicle, and prostate are essential for maturation and motility of sperms. The seminal plasma along with the sperms constitute the semen. The function of male sex accessory duct and glands are maintained by the testicular hormone androgen. Figure 3.6. Structure of sperm. The process of formation of a mature female gamete is called oogenesis, which is markedly different from the spermatogenesis. Oogenesis is initiated during the embryonic development stage when a couple of million gametes, mother cell oogonia, are formed within each fetal ovary. No more oogonia are added after birth. These cells start division and enter into prophase 1 of the meiotic division and get temporarily arrested at that age, called primary oocyte. Each primary oocyte then gets surrounded by a layer of granulosa cells and is called primary follicle. Figure 3.7. A large number of these follicles degenerate during the phase from birth to puberty. Therefore, at puberty, only 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicles are left in each ovary. The primary follicle gets surrounded by more layers of granulosa cells and a theca and are called secondary follicles. The secondary follicles soon transform into the tertiary follicle, which is characterized by a fluid-filled cavity called antrum. The theca layer is organized into an inner theca interna and an outer theca externa. It is important to draw your attention that is at this stage that is primary oocyte within the tertiary follicle grow in size and complete its first meiotic division. It is an unequal division resulting in the formation of a large haploid secondary oocyte and a tiny first polar body. Figure 3.8b. The secondary oocyte retain bulk of the nutrient-rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. Can you think of any advantage for this? Does the first polar body born out of the first meiotic division divide further or degenerate? At present, we are not very certain about this. The tertiary follicle further changes into the mature follicle or Graafian follicle. Figure 3.7. The secondary oocyte forms a new membrane called zona pellucida surrounded it. The Graafian follicle now ruptures to release the secondary oocyte ovum from the ovary by the process called ovulation. Can you identify major difference between spermatogenesis and oogenesis? A diagrammatic representation of spermatogenesis and oogenesis is given below. Figure 3.8. Figure 3.7 diagrammatic section view of ovary. Figure 3.8 schematic representation of A. Spermatogenesis, B. Oogenesis. 3.4 Menstrual cycle. The reproductive cycle in the female primates, example monkeys, apes, and human beings, is called menstrual cycle. The first menstrual begins at puberty is called menarche. In humans, female menstruation is repeated at an average interval of about 28 to 29 days, and the cycle of events starting from one menstruation till the next one is called menstrual cycle. One ovum is released ovulation during the middle of each menstrual cycle. Figure 3.9 diagrammatic presentation of various events during a menstrual cycle. The major event of the menstrual cycle are shown in the figure 3.9. The cycle starts with the menstrual phase when menstrual flow occur and it lasts for 3 to 5 days. The menstrual flow result due to breakdown of endometrial lining of the uterus and its blood vessels, which forms liquid that comes out through vagina. Menstruation only occur if the released ovum is not fertilized. Lack of menstruation may be indicative of pregnancy. However, it may be also caused due to some other underlying causes like stress, poor health, etc. The menstrual phase is followed by the follicle phase. During this phase, the primary follicles in the ovary grow to become a fully mature Graafian follicle and stimulate, and the androgen of uterus regenerates through proliferation. These changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced by changes in the level of pituitary and ovarian hormone. Figure 3.9. The secretion of gonadotropin LH and FSH increase gradually during the follicle phase and stimulate follicular development, as well as the secretion of estrogen by the growing follicle. Both LH and FSH attain a peak level in the middle of the cycle, about 14th day. Rapid secretion of LH leading to its maximum level during the mid-cycle, called LH surge, induce rupture of Graafian follicle and thereby the release of ovum. Ovulation. The ovulatory is followed by the luteal phase. During this, the remaining part of the Graafian follicle transform as the corpus luteum. Figure 3.9. The corpus luteum secrete large amount of progesterone, which is essential for maintenance of the endometrium, such as endometrium is necessary for implantation of the fertilization ovum and other events of pregnancy. During pregnancy, all events of the menstrual cycle stops and there is no menstrual. In the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerate. This causes disintegration of the endometrium, leading to menstruation, marking a new cycle. In human beings, menstruation cycle cases around 50 years of age, that is termed as menopause. Cycling menstruation is an indicator of normal reproductive phase and extend between menarche and menopause. 3.5 Fertilization and implantation. During copulation, coitus semen is released by the penis into the vagina. Insemination, the motile sperms swim rapidly, pass through the cervix, enter into the uterus, and finally reach the ampullary region of the fallopian tube. Figure 3.11b. The ovum released by the ovary is also transported to the ampullary region, where fertilization takes place. Fertilization can only occur if the ovum and sperm are transported simultaneously to the ampullary region. This is the reason why not all copulations lead to fertilization in pregnancy. The process of fusion of a sperm with an ovum is called fertilization. During fertilization, sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer of the ovum, figure 3.10, and induce changes in the membrane that blocks the entry of additional sperm. Thus, it ensured that only one sperm can fertilize an ovum. The secretion of the acrosome help the sperm enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum through the zona pellucida and the plasma membrane. Figure 3.10, ovum surrounded by a few sperms. This induced the completion of the meiotic division of the secondary oocyte. The second meiotic division is also unequal and result in the formation of a second polar body and a haploid ovum. Soon the haploid nucleus of the sperm and that of the ovum fuse together to form a diploid zygote. How many chromosomes will be there in the zygote? One has to remember that the sex of the baby has been decided at the stage itself. Let us see how. As you know, the chromosome pattern in the human female is XX and that in the male is XY. Therefore, all the haploid gametes produced by the female have the sex chromosome X, whereas in the male gametes sperms the sex chromosome could be either X or Y. Hence, 50% of sperm carry the X chromosome while the other 50 carry the Y. After fusion of male and female gametes, the zygote would carry either XX or XY depending on whether the sperms carrying X or Y fertilize the ovum. The zygote carrying XX would develop into a female baby and XY would form a male. You will learn more about the chromosomal pattern in chapter 5. This is why scientifically it is correct to say that the sex of the baby is determined by the father, not by the mother. The meiotic division starts as the zygote moves through the isthmus of the oviduct called cleavage toward the uterus, figure 3.11, and forms 2, 4, 8, 16 daughter cells called blastomeres. The embryo with 8 to 16 blastomeres called the morula, figure 3.11e. The morula continues to divide and transform into blastocyst, figure 3.11g. As it moves further into the uterus, the blastomere and the blastocyst are arranged into an outer layer called trophoblast and inner group of cells attached to trophoblast called the inner cell mass. The trophoblast layer then gets attached to the endometrium and the inner cell mass gets differentiated as the embryo. After attachment, the uterine cell divide rapidly and cover the blastocyst. As a result, the blastocyst becomes embedded into the endometrium of the uterus, figure 3.11h. This is called implantation and it leads to pregnancy. 3.6, pregnancy and embryonic development. After implantation, finger-like projection appears on the trophoblast called chronic villi, which are surrounded by the uterine tissue and maternal blood. The chronic villi and the uterine tissue become interdigitated with each other and jointly form a structural and functional unit between developing embryo, fetus, and maternal body called placenta, figure 3.12. The placenta facilitates the supply of oxygen and nutrient to the embryo and also removal of carbon dioxide and external waste material produced by the embryo. The placenta is connected to the embryo through an umbilical cord which help in the transport of substances to and form the embryo. Placenta also act as an endocrine tissue and produce several hormones like human chronic gonadotropin HCG, human placental lactogen HPL, estrogen, progesterone, etc. In the later phase of pregnancy, a hormone called relaxin is also secreted by the ovary. Let us remember that HCG, HPL, and relaxin are produced in women only during pregnancy. In addition, during pregnancy, the level of other hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine, etc. are increased several folds in the maternal blood. Increased production of these hormones is essential for supporting the fetal growth, metabolic changes in the mother, and maintenance of pregnancy. Figure 3.12, the human fetus within the uterus. Immediately after implantation, the inner cell mass embryo differentiates into an outer layer called endoderm and an inner layer called endoderm. A mesoderm soon appears between the ectoderm and the mesoderm. Endoderm. These three layers give rise to all tissue organs in adult. It needs to be mentioned here that the inner cell mass contain certain cells called stem cells which have to be potency to give rise to all the tissues and organs. What are the major features of embryonic development at various months of pregnancy? The human pregnancy lasts 9 months. Do you know for how many months pregnancy lasts in dogs, elephants, cats? Find out in human beings. After 1 month of pregnancy, the embryo heart is formed. The first sign of the growing fetus may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully through the stetococcus. By the end of the second month of pregnancy, the fetus develops limbs and digits. By the end of 12th week, first trimester, most of the major organ systems are formed. For example, the limbs, external genital organ are well developed. The first movement of the fetus and appears of hair on the head are usually observed during the fifth month. By the end of about 24 weeks, end of second trimester, the body is covered by a fine like eyelids, separates and eyelashes are formed. By the end of 9 month of pregnancy, the fetus is fully developed and is ready for delivery. 3.7 Parturition and lactation. The average duration of human pregnancy is about 9 months, which is called the gestation period. Vigorous contraction of the uterus at the end of pregnancy causes expulsion delivery of the fetus. The process of delivery of the fetus childbirth is called parturition. Parturition is induced by a complex neuroendocrine mechanism. The signal of parturition originates from the fully developed fetus in the placenta, which induce mild uterine contraction called fetal ejection reflex. The trigger release of the oxytocin from the maternal pituitary. Oxytocin acts as an uterine muscle and cause stronger uterine contraction, which in turn stimulate further secretion of oxytocin. This simultaneously, the stimulatory reflex between the uterine contraction and oxytocin secretion continue, resulting in stronger and stronger contraction. This leads to expulsion of the baby out of the uterus through the birth canal. Parturition. Soon after the infant is delivered, the placenta is also expelled out of the uterus. What do you think the doctors inject to induce delivery? The mammary glands of the female undergo differentiation during pregnancy and starts producing milk towards the end of the pregnancy by the process called lactation. This helps the mother in feeding the newborn. The milk produced during the initial few days of lactation is called colostrum, which contains several antibodies absolutely essential to develop resistance for the newborn babies. Breastfeeding during the initial period of infant growth is recommended by doctors for bringing a healthy life. Summary: humans are sexually reproducing and viviparous. The male reproductive system is composed of a pair of testes, the male sex accessory ducts, and the accessory glands and external genitalia. Each testis has about 250 compartments called testicular lobules, and each lobule contains 1 to 3 highly called seminiferous tubule. Each seminiferous tubule is lying inside the spermatogonia and Sertoli cell. The spermatogonia undergo meiotic division, leading to sperm formation, while Sertoli cells provide nourishment to the dividing germ cells. The Leydig cells outside the seminiferous tubule synthesize and secrete testicular hormone called androgen. The male external genitalia is called penis. The female reproductive system constitutes a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviducts, a uterus, a vagina, external genitalia, and a pair of mammary glands. The ovary produce the male gametes, ovum, and some steroid hormone. Ovarian follicles in different stages of development are embedded in the stroma. The oviduct, uterus, and vagina are female accessory ducts. The uterus has 3 layers, namely perimetrium, myometrium, and endometrium. The female external genitalia include mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, clitoris. The mammary gland are one of the female secondary characteristics. Spermatogenesis results in the formation of sperm that is transported by the male sex accessory ducts. A normal human female is composed of a head, neck, a middle piece, and tail. The process of formation of mature female gamete is called oogenesis. The reproductive cycle of female primate is called menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycles start only after attaining sexual menstruation. Puberty: during ovulation, only one ovum is released per menstrual cycle. The cyclical changes in the ovary and the uterus during menstrual cycle are induced by changes in the levels of pituitary and ovarian hormone after coitus. Sperms are transported to the ampulla where the sperms fertilize the ovum, leading to formation of a diploid zygote. The presence of XY chromosome in the sperm determines the sex of the embryo. The zygote undergo repeated mitotic division to form a blastocyst, which is implanted in the uterus, resulting in pregnancy. After 9 months of pregnancy, the fully developed fetus is ready for delivery. The process of childbirth is called parturition, which is induced by a complex neuroendocrine mechanism involving cortisol and estrogen and oxytocin. Mammary glands differentiate during pregnancy and secrete milk after childbirth. The newborn baby is fed milk by the mother lactation during the initial few months of the growth.